Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome to part 4 of our card grading video series. You might remember in part 1, hopefully you've watched that one. If not, you can go back and watch it. But in part 1, I picked about 3 dozen, a little more than 3 dozen baseball cards to send to 3 different card grading companies. I chose PSA, SGC, and Beckett. I sent the cards off. In the part 1 video, you can see which cards I sent and my predicted grades. And that was the big thing. I wanted to see how close I could get on my predictions. But also I wanted to evaluate the slabs, talk about how much it costs, the price to get these cards graded, and just an overall feel for the grading companies. This is my first experiment sending cards in to be graded, and I got the SGC cards back first. It took about a month, and that was part 2 of the video. So check that video out if you haven't yet. That's part 2 when the SGC cards came back. Part 3, when the Beckett cards came back, that was about a week ago. So I think it took around, if I remember right, maybe close to 2 months for the cards to come back from Beckett. Or actually closer to 3 months actually for those cards to come back from Beckett, because that was about a week ago. Opened those up. That was part 3, and you can see how close I was on the grades. Now I have another box back. These are from PSA. It's been about a little over a week since the Beckett cards came back. So it took about 3 months for these cards to come back from PSA. So let's open these up and see what we've got. Let's see how close I was on my predictions, and it should be fun. All right, so I've got the cards opened up, the box opened up, all the cards pulled out. I did peek at the grades because you're like a kid at Christmas. You can't, some people will make those videos where they cover up the grade. I can't do that. I want to see what the grade is. And then I also put them in some plastic holders just so as I handle them, I'm not getting fingerprints all over the cards. I will say that my predictions, they were okay. They were okay. I sent 20 cards in to PSA, and I had a predicted grade of 10 on 9 of those cards, and I did not get 9 10s from PSA, which is not terribly surprising. But before we get into the grades, let's talk about the slabs a little bit. All right, so first, first impression is that the slabs feel a little bit thin, a little bit light. I don't know if I'd say chintzy because they feel solid, and the cards seem to be seated in the plastic slabs pretty well, but they are noticeably thinner than the slabs from both SGC and Beckett, except for there's at least one card in here that's a relic card, and so it's thicker, so then it's in a thicker slab. So PSA uses multiple different thicknesses of the slabs. Now, if you're storing the cards, I guess thin would be better because you can store more. But it seems like for the display, maybe the slightly thicker slab from SGC or Beckett would be better than these thin ones from PSA. And my impression overall is that the labels are not as good as the Beckett labels. The Beckett labels, they pop more, they get your attention, and I just like the Beckett labels better. The SGC ones, they're classic, they're simple. The PSA ones, they're at least consistent. These are the same type label that PSA has had for decades, really, with the white center and the red outline. They've changed a little bit over the years, but they are pretty consistent. I'd say overall, the slabs are decent, but I really do think that Beckett has the best slabs, better than the PSA. And then SGC and PSA it's kind of a toss-up. They're about the same in my book, but that's my evaluation of the slabs. So what about the price? Remember, the price to send, I calculated per card, just took an average, so it included the entire grading cost, plus the shipping to PSA, plus the return shipping, and then insurance both ways as well. And it was a cost of $23.61 per card, which overall I don't think is horrible. I said the same thing in the the Beckett video as far as price goes. As a customer, I'd like it to be a little less than the $23.61 per card. But there's supply and demand too. PSA has a lot of demand for these cards to be graded. And if they were to lower the price, let's say they cut the price down to $18 per card or $15 per card like SGC has, the volume would just increase exponentially, and they wouldn't be able to keep up. PSA can't really keep up right now. We'll talk about that in a second when I talk about the turnaround time here. But as the price goes down, the demand goes up, and PSA wouldn't be able to keep up. At some point, though, they can't keep raising the price. And since I sent these cards in, it was $19.99 per card, and that was the bulk. That's why I had to send 20. And you have to have like a PSA membership. I didn't factor that into the cost because I just didn't want to add that amount in, because you get the magazines and you get the access to the price guide and whatever else. So I didn't include that membership price. I just included the grading price at $19.99 each, plus the shipping and the insurance. So that's where the $23.61 came from. But since I sent these cards in, 3 months ago, they've increased the price, and it's now, even for the bulk submissions, it's $22 a card, $21.99, but $22 a card. So the price that I paid has already gone up by $2. And there's always rumors that PSA is going to increase their price even more because the demand is just so high. So at some point they can't keep increasing the price. It's just not economical to send in cards once it gets too expensive. And to be realistic, it really doesn't cost PSA all that much to grade the cards. I kind of did some quick and dirty math, and I was like, even if you have multiple employees involved in the process over at PSA of bringing the card in, verifying the card, grading the card, putting it in the slab, printing the label, and then shipping it back, I'm guesstimating they can probably do somewhere around 6 to 10 cards per hour, as far as everyone involved. So at a price of $20 a card, that's somewhere around $120 to $200 an hour. I guarantee they're not paying their employees $120 an hour or $200 an hour. So at some point, PSA can't justify increasing the price too much. But as of right now, I think the price it's fair. It's on the high end. I think it's a little too high, but they can't lower it down without having demand just skyrocket, and then they'd have to hire more employees and whatnot. But that would increase the turnaround time, which we're going to talk about next. Let's talk about the turnaround time on these PSA cards. So when I sent these cards in, PSA quoted me, the customer, a time of 45 days. Now it just said 45 days. I assumed that to be calendar days, but upon further investigation, I found out that that's 45 business days, which 5 days in a week, quick and dirty math, that's 9 weeks. So a little bit over 2 months is what PSA said to me as the customer. They said, if you send us these cards of yours and you pay us, we will grade them and turn them around, get them back to you in approximately 2 months or a little more than 2 months. It actually took more like 3 months, so about a third longer than their quoted time. And it did take them longer than SGC, and it took them longer than Beckett. So bear that in mind if you're going to send cards in to be graded. And I think even now, since I sent these in 3 months ago, the turnaround time has grown even more to, I think, closer to 4.5 months now. Will someday you have to wait 6 months to get cards back from PSA? Will there be a day where you mail cards to them on opening day and you don't get them back until the World Series? I don't know. I hope that's never the case. But that was the quoted time was 9 weeks. It was actually a little over 12 weeks for these cards to come back. So not the greatest customer service in my book. I said this in the other videos. If you should be able to estimate how long it's going to take. And however long it's going to take, you should tell your customers so they know what to expect. That's just my opinion, but that was the results of the turnaround time for these cards from PSA. Okay, so what about the grades? That was the big thing. I wanted to see how well, since this was my first time sending cards in to be graded, how close could I get in my predictions, looking at the cards and kind of grading them myself, how close could I get to the professional grades? I alluded to this earlier. With PSA, I was okay. I did all right. It could have been better, especially on the gem mints. I sent in 20 cards, and on PSA, I tried to find a larger percentage of cards that I thought might score that perfect 10 gem mint. Because let's face it, that's like the best you can get in the card collecting market is a PSA 10. Maybe a Beckett Black Label 10. But anyway, PSA 10, generally the best that you can get. So I had 9 of the 20 cards, almost half of them, that I thought would be perfect 10 gem mint. Well, I'll hold you in suspense a little bit longer to tell you how many of those 9, but it definitely was not all 9. Now the cards that I predicted a 9, I was actually pretty close on. I did quite well on those, and I did pretty well on the ones that I predicted to be an 8 as well. Well, let's start with the cards that I got right, because let's face it, that's the most fun, is to look at the cards that you got right, including there will be one gem 10 in the cards that I got right. And out of the 20 cards that I sent, 5 of them, I was 100% correct on my predicted grade. So let's look at those right now. Okay, first we have this Nolan Ryan. It's a 1990 and it's Bowman inserts. Notice there's no card number because it's actually like a sweepstakes card. But I actually pulled this card from a pack, when I was 11 years old, and I've kept it in fairly good condition. My brother's favorite player was Nolan Ryan, and so I would take fairly good care of a Nolan Ryan card, as I did with this one. Now, I noticed before I sent this card in to be graded, there was some very minor wear on just one of the top left corner of this card. And based on the condition of that corner, plus it is a little bit off-centered top to bottom, so based on that, I predicted an 8, and it came back an 8. Up next, we have Darryl Strawberry. This is a 1994 Topps Gold Darryl Strawberry. And when I looked at this one under jeweler's loop, I noticed some very, very minor wear. And in my notes, I actually did put very, very minor wear, which for me is different than very. And so that's why I was like, even though it's on 2 of the bottom corners, it's so very, very minor that I predicted a 9. And this one did come back a 9. So that was my second one that I got 100% correct. Fast forward now 30 years to 2024, and we have Ellie De La Cruz rookie card. This is a Stadium Club, Topps Stadium Club. And again, this is the exact same thing as that Darryl Strawberry Topps Gold card from 30 years earlier. Very, very minor wear on the 2 bottom corners. So I predicted a 9 on this one, and it came back a 9. Also from 2024, this one's fun. It's a Paul Skeens Topps Gold card, so it is numbered to 2024, which Topps has been doing for a while now, where they will number their gold cards to whatever the year is. So this is the Skeens. It's from the Topps Update. It's the rookie card, so a lot of people like this card. I noticed some very, very minor wear on the bottom right corner of this card when I was looking at it under a jeweler's loop. I was kind of hoping that this might be one that, even though I predicted it as a 9, maybe it would come back as a 10, because a 10 on this card would be probably add a couple $100 worth of value to it. A 9 is still okay. I predicted a 9, and it came back a 9. All right, this next card, this is a fun card. I like this one. I also pulled this one from a pack. Let's see, this is a 1995. So I pulled this one from a pack 30 years ago when I was a kid. This one is, and I'll bring up the picture now, it is a 1995 Studio Ken Griffey Jr. Platinum, and they try to make it look like a credit card, really. And the card is actually plastic. And even though I pulled it from a pack these 30 years ago, I kept it in good shape, and it was my only gem mint. There, I spilled the beans. This was the only 10 gem mint card of my submission. As I mentioned earlier, I had predicted 9 cards to be gem 10s. This one was the only one that scored a 10. We'll look at some of those other ones later. But yes, I predicted a 10 on this one, and it came back a 10. Okay, this next bunch of cards here, there are 9 of them in this bunch. All of these, I was off by just 1 point on the grade. So if I predicted an 8, it came back a 9, or if I predicted a 9, it came back an 8. Most of them came back lower than my prediction. But we will start first with this 2024 Topps update, Alec Bohm, and this is an all-star stitches. So I think the theory is that this relic patch actually came from the all-star jersey. It at least came from a game-worn jersey of some kind. But when I looked at it, I noticed some wear around the edges, and this is a thicker card. And earlier I did mention that some of the PSA slabs are quite thin, except for this relic slab is about twice as thick as the other ones, and it's noticeably thicker when you pick it up, because the card is thicker, and also because the card's thicker, I think the edges can develop a little bit more wear, which is what I noticed when I was looking at the card before I sent it in, causing me to predict a 8. It actually came back a 9. So I was pretty pleased with that. I was off by 1, and it was in my favor. Well, the rest of these in this bunch are going to go the other way. These are all, the other 8 of these are going to be 1 point lower than my prediction. So up first we have this 1995 Stadium Club Dennis Eckersley Ringleaders. These cards are super busy, but I think they're cool. They're from the mid-90s. This one, when I was looking at it, I noticed slight fraying, very slight fraying on all 4 corners. I predicted an 8. It came back a 7. This next one is a 1993. It's Ken Griffey Jr. and Upper Deck. I don't know if this is pronounced Ios. I've always pronounced it Ios collection. But anyway, it's a cool card. It's the borderless. It's kind of an iconic Griffey card. And if you can get one of these Gem Mint 10, they're worth, several $100s. I've seen some prices up close to $1,000 for this card if it's a Gem Mint 10. This one I knew when I was sending it in was not going to be a Gem Mint 10. I noticed that there was one edge that was just slightly bent on it. And bent sounds horrible, but it's not like a bend you can even see. Well, I guess you can kind of see it with your naked eye just a little bit, but everything else on the card looked perfect. So I predicted it would come back as a 9, and it came back 1 point lower as an 8. This next card is another one that is in a thicker slab. It's a slightly thicker card. It's not a relic card. It's from 1996. Emotion XL, Cal Ripken Jr. And on this one, I really couldn't find anything wrong. This is one of we're going to get into this group of cards now where I couldn't find anything wrong. The centering looked like a 10, the edges 10, corners 10, surface 10, and they all came back as a 9. So this is the first of that group. I did predict a 10. It came back 1 grade lower as a 9. And here's another one like that. This one is a 1996 Emotion XL Frank Thomas Legion of Boom. And this card's kind of cool because it's transparent. You can see light through here around Frank Thomas. And a lot of these cards that I predicted a 10, it's kind of disappointing because if they had scored a 10, in some cases these cards would be worth, $100 or hundreds of dollars more than they are as a 9. And what can you do about it? I looked at these cards. They looked like 10s to me, but as in the case of this one, this Frank Thomas, where I predicted a 10, it came back a 9. This one as well, a 1996 Stadium Club Derek Jeter. I could not find anything wrong. Everything looked perfect to me. I predicted a 10. It came back a 9. I mean, in hindsight, I could make the case that the centering is off a little bit from, well, I guess it's a landscape card, so left to right, but if you're holding the card, a up and down in the case, it's top to bottom. I could make the case that the centering is a little bit off that way. So maybe that's what bumped it down to a 9, and maybe I didn't catch that when I was sending it in. But anyway, I predicted a 10 and it came back a 9. Here's one of them, like I talked about earlier, that really would have been nice if it came back a 10. This is a 1997 Topps Gallery Frank Thomas. It's one of those Peter Max serigraphs. And it's a really cool card, kind of an iconic Frank Thomas card. And I was hoping to get a 10. It would be quite valuable as a 10, at least for me. I mean, I'm not talking thousands and thousands of dollars, but hundreds of dollars as a 10, most likely. But it came back as a 9. All right, I've got 2 more that fall into that category of I predicted a 10 and it came back a 9, and this is one of them, 1997 Topps Gallery, Ken Griffey Jr. Gallery of Heroes. A couple notes on this one. Again, it's one of those kind of see-through plastic cards from the 90s, which is cool. But you'll notice that it's off-center, it's crooked in its holder in the slab, and it came from PSA like that. I tried kind of gently tapping it. I didn't want to like jostle the card too much, but I tried to gently tap it to get it to skew back over, and it won't move. So I think permanently and forever, unfortunately, this card is just not slabbed very well. The card is a great card, and it does have some value even as a 9, but again, this one would have been really cool if it came back as a 10. I predicted a 10, didn't see anything wrong with it. It came back a 9. And this is the last of the 10s that came back as 9s. This is a 98 Topps Interleague Mystery Finest Refractor. This is probably the first refractor card that I pulled out of a pack. This was back in 1998. I was basically done collecting by 1998, but apparently I bought at least one pack of Topps, and I got this Greg Maddux. When I looked at it before I sent it in to be graded, it looked perfect to me, but it came back a 9. Okay, we're getting towards the end of the cards now, and this group right here, there's 4 cards that came in 2 points lower than what I had predicted. So, I mean, you could make the case that the ones where I was only off by 1 point, you know, okay, the 10s to a 9s were kind of disappointing, but for me to be off 2 points, I must have missed something, or maybe the grading isn't as consistent as it could be. But let's look at these 4 cards. First up is a 1994 Topps Tim Salmon All-Star Rookie. This one, based on really just the centering, and also I did make a note that there's very minor wear on the top right corner. Based on that, the corner and the centering, it's clearly off-center top to bottom. I predicted a 7 on this. PSA gave this one of those weird ratings. It's 9 OC, which the OC stands for off center. And I've seen these before. I've seen MC for miscut, but they're really misleading because you can't say this is a PSA 9. Based on the corner that was a little bit worn, and based on the centering, it's clearly off-centered top to bottom, and maybe a little bit left to right, but mostly top to bottom. So based on that, I give it a 7, and PSA gives it this 9, but it's not really a 9, it's a 9 OC. I kind of put this one in the category of cards that I got correct on my predictions, because I predicted a 7, and a 9 OC really is essentially the same value as a 7. If I were to try to sell this on eBay, it would not sell the same as a 9. It would sell a lot closer to a PSA 7. So I really wish PSA had just put a 7 on it, because that's what it is, but they gave it a 9 OC. This next one that I was off by 2 is a little disappointing. This is one, again, that I pulled from a pack back in 1996, and I really liked this card. This was one of my favorite cards from that year of the cards that I pulled out. It's Tony Gwynn, which I've always liked Tony Gwynn as a player. It's a 22 karat gold, leaf gold stars card, and it is serial numbered to 2500, which back then there weren't a whole lot of serial numbered cards. So this card was really cool, and it was actually quite valuable even when I pulled it out. Now there's a little story that goes with this card. It was so cool that I put it in one of those screw down slab holders, like about probably a ½ inch thick plastic slab holder. And unfortunately, when I pulled the card out just 3-4 months ago, when I was thinking about sending it in to be graded, some of the gold on the back corner flaked off and stuck to the plastic screw down holder because the card was in there so tight that when I pulled the plastic off, it actually peeled a little bit of the back of the card off. Now, I thought to myself, it's bad. I mean, you can see it with the naked eye, but it's not like it ruined the entire card. And it's on the back and it's on the bottom corner of the back. The front still looks great. So I predicted that this one would come back as a 7. There are some very small divots on the front of the card as well. So I said, all right, it's a 7. Well, clearly PSA didn't think it was a 7. They gave it a 5. But let that be a lesson to you. Be careful how you store your cards. I mean, this should be common sense. The way you store your cards matters. And even in this case, I thought I was protecting the card. And the irony is, if I had just put it in a top or in a penny sleeve and then in a top loader, it probably would be a 7 to this day, maybe even an 8, who knows. But because I put it in one of those super heavy duty tight screw down holders, I actually ended up almost ruining the card. Here's another card that's pretty fun. This is a 1997 Score franchise Ken Griffey, and this card is one of the only cards, it's the only card as far as I know, that glows in the dark. And I'll take a picture of it. I'll try to get it glowing so you can see. Maybe I'll even turn the lights off so you can see it change from its regular to its glowing. But I pulled it from a pack when I was a kid, and I've kept it in what I thought was pretty decent shape all these years, because when I went to look at it, I actually predicted that it would come back as a 9. There was some very slight wear on a couple of the edges, but I thought that's worth a 9. Again, PSA didn't agree with me. They bumped it down 2, or at least they graded it 2 lower than I did, and they graded it as a 7. Now this card, I will say, I'm tempted to make one of those videos. Maybe you've seen the videos where somebody will take a card and they'll crack it out of the case and they'll resubmit it and see if it gets a better grade. Because this card, I think, is definitely better than a 7. Like I said, I predicted a 9. Like, it should at least get an 8. But I really do think it's a 9, and it's got an off chance of even being a 10, I think. Because I said, like, very, very worn, slightly worn edge. So I guess probably not a 10, but maybe a 9. So I'm tempted to do that. Maybe I will someday, but for now it's going to stay in this holder. But I was a little bit disappointed with this card and the grade that it got. Okay, this card should look familiar or similar. It's similar to the Dennis Eckersley card that we saw earlier. This one's just the Barry Bonds 1995 Stadium Club Ringleaders. And when I looked at this card, I couldn't find anything wrong. This one fit in the category of what I thought could potentially be a gem mint 10 card. PSA gave it an 8. So they clearly saw something, some scratches or something. I don't see any wear on the corners at all. So most likely with this kind of chrome finish, this shiny finish, most likely there's some small scratches on there somewhere that caused PSA to give it an 8. This card here is the only card in this submission that I sent in that I did not pull from a pack. This is a Tony Gwynn rookie card, 1983 Donruss. I bought this as a kid at a card show or a card shop. I don't remember where, but it wasn't that expensive. It was probably under $5 at the time because it's not in perfect mint condition. But when I looked at it, I saw a slight crinkle in the bottom right part of the card, and it's also off center. You can tell a little top to bottom and a little left to right. The centering's not perfect, but the centering is probably at least an 8. And then that very slight crinkle, but the corners look great. The surface looks great other than, the slight crinkle. And I wouldn't even call it a crease. It's almost like just a very small portion of the card somehow got crinkle. That's the best way to describe it. And in the close-up that I do, you probably won't even be able to see it. But I predicted an 8, and PSA, just like SGC, if you watch my SGC video, I got burned on a couple cards that I sent in that had legitimate creases in the card that I didn't notice before I sent them in. This one I actually did notice the crinkle. I thought it might still get an 8, maybe a 7. It came back a 5. All right, now we get to this one. This is the worst card that I sent in. I couldn't find anything wrong with it. This is a 1994 Pacific Crown Don Mattingly Jewels of Crown. I don't know what that means. I think I probably bought like 1 pack of Pacific that year. I didn't buy a whole lot of Pacific, and this one happened to be in there. It's shiny, it's sparkly, the corners were crisp 90 degrees. The edges looked perfect. The centering, I mean, it's a borderless card, but I measured the centering between the D and the Y at the beginning and end of Don Mattingly's name. I measured the centering up here by the logo, and I predicted a 10. It came back a 6. I don't know where the 6 comes from. I've looked at it closely. I didn't see any surface scratches. The corners still look 100% sharp to me. For it to get a 6, the grader at PSA had to notice something pretty bad, I would think. But the interesting thing is, there were actually cards in my other submissions that did the same thing. There was a card from Beckett that got a lot lower grade than I thought it should, and there were a couple cards from SGC that got grades a lot lower than I thought they should. So I think the moral of the story is, even though with this submission I was trying in my mind to grade these cards very critically and be kind of a hard grader, a lot harder than you normally would be, the graders themselves are still, most likely what they're doing is they're looking at the cards and they're trying to find something wrong. So when you submit cards, my advice to you and my advice to myself also is, next time I submit cards, think like a grader and be like, I'm going to try to find something wrong with this card. Every card you look at under the jeweler's loop, and however you look at the cards under magnification, say to yourself, I'm going to try to find something wrong with this card. And if I can find something wrong with it, I'm going to start bumping down those grades, pretty aggressively, because it seems like that's what the grading companies do. Now that said, I will remember back, to the Beckett video that I made not too long ago, because I just got the cards back from Beckett a week and a half ago, and those grades were generally pretty close to what I had predicted. And I looked at all these cards at the same time. I sent them to the 3 companies at the same time. So for me to be pretty close, I was 80% accurate on my Beckett predictions, whereas on SGC, I was only 45% accurate. And here on PSA, you could make the case that I was 70%, but it was 50% accuracy on PSA. But if you include the ones where I was only off by 1 point, then you come up with, I was 70%. But for me to be that much higher with Beckett tells me that maybe Beckett is more consistent in how they grade. And I would say that that's the case from what I've seen from both SGC and PSA. Now, granted, the sample size is fairly small. We're only talking, 41 cards here, but it's still enough of a sample, and I tried to include a broad enough range of cards. I didn't say, here, I'm going to send 41 of my best cards. I was like, I'll send some that I think are 10s, and some that I think are 9s, and some that I think are 8s, and I'll even throw in a few that I think are 7s, and then see how those grades come back. And it seemed like Beckett was the most consistent in their grading across the board. But as I wrap up this particular video for PSA, I do want to say thank you for watching this video, and I hope you've watched the other ones as well. The first one, the SGC one, the Beckett one. I hope you'll come back and watch the one where I grade the graders. But just to wrap up for PSA, I think overall the value as far as the price, it's decent, especially when you consider that a PSA graded card is considered more valuable by the hobby in general, especially a 10, a PSA 10 is going to be, it's kind of the benchmark for value in the industry. So I think at $22 or now it would be up to closer to $20, $24, $25 all in price. It's still a decent value. It does somewhat limit the cards you can send in, because you wouldn't want to send in a card that's, even as a 10, it's only going to be worth $60 or $70. Because if it costs you $25 to get it graded and for some reason it comes back a 9, as we've seen, a lot of the ones that I thought were 10 came back a 9, now you've just wasted your money, because a PSA 9, even if the 10 only sells for 70 or 80 bucks, the 9's only going to sell for 25 bucks, which you're lucky if you break even at that point with fees and everything else. So the value, I think, is still okay. It's still there, especially for cards that are worth a little bit more. The turnaround time, I think PSA has a lot to work on there. They either need to hire some more people or figure out more efficient ways to process these cards, because the turnaround time is just bad, to be honest, and it seems to be getting worse. The slabs are decent. They do the job. We'll put it that way. I don't think they're anything to write home about. I really do think the Beckett slabs look nicer and feel nicer, but the PSA slabs, they do the job. So that's what I would have to say about the slabs. Overall, I had a lot of fun making these videos. I had a lot of fun, picking the cards and sending them in and getting them back. I had help from my kids who've, they've popped in and out of these videos here and there. I've edited all that part out. They really don't want my kids on the videos, but it was fun to have them help out too. I will say, and I've said this in some of my other videos, that even though I talk about, how valuable the cards are, and talking about the numbers and trying to get a gem mint 10, and it's disappointed that I only got an 8. That part of the hobby is fun, but at the end of the day, we have to remember that this really is a hobby that all of us started as kids, and we should pass this on to our kids and make it fun, and not just make it about the money, and not just make it about trying to, score that big hit in that hobby box that you're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for. Like, try to make the hobby about the players and about the cards. I mean, like I said, I got cards like this Griffey that I pulled when I was a kid from a pack. And I'm sure on the day that I pulled it out, I was showing everybody. I was probably, hey, going to my brother, hey, Steve, check out this card that I got, and showing my parents and whatever else. So that would be the way I'd like to end this video, that I had a lot of fun, but let's try to keep the joy in the hobby as much as we can, and not focus as much on the money or the value of the cards or whatever, but keep it fun. If you have kids, bring them into the hobby if they're not already. Buy them some cards for their birthday. Buy them some cards for Christmas. Give them cards. I've given a lot of my cards to my kids, and like here, or I'll buy packs and I'll split them with them, or I'll buy a box and say, here, you get half the packs and I get half the packs. If you've got nieces or nephews that are interested in baseball, try to bring them into the hobby as well. And let's make it as much fun as we can for everybody. But thank you for watching this video. Check out my other videos if you haven't yet, and God bless.